Good morning, everyone. So I'm sitting in for Swami Atmagnananda this morning, talking about getting real, living life in this world as if it didn't matter, being the authentic you, finding out what that is, and how to live a moment in that reality. So I'm going to start, as I often do, with a Hafiz poem. Because in many ways, this poem outlines in a wonderful way, kind of encapsulates more than outlines, the way of being that we're going to talk about this morning. Hafiz writes a poem that says, "In many parts of the world, water is scarce and precious, and people sometimes have to walk a great distance and then carry heavy jugs upon their heads. Because of our wisdom, we will travel far for love. All movement is a sign of thirst. Most speaking really says, I'm hungry to know you. Every desire of your body is holy. Every desire of your body is holy. Dear one, why wait until you are dying to discover that divine truth?" I've often enjoyed this poem because of that shocking repetition there at the end. Every desire of your body is holy. And to see written in spiritual poetry that in reality is not the case. In our deluded state, it's not the case, that in reality it is. In reality, everything about you is divine and is beautiful and is lovely. And that there is nothing inherent in any of our experience that would change that. It's only our perception of who we are that does not allow us to see and experience that beauty, to see and experience that wholeness. I want to dig deep into Vivekananda this morning and some of the things that he has written about how to live and how to see this world that we live in. I'm going to check my mic volumes here real quick because it seems like they're really low. Yes. Hold on. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make that adjustment. Vivekananda says, this earth is blissful. When you accompany that with Sri Ramakrishna's words, when M is complaining to him about how painful this world is and how much suffering there is and how awful it is, and Ramakrishna looks at him in a puzzled look and says, "This world is a mansion of mirth. What are you talking about?" And what a difference of experiences that we can all have based on the condition of our mind. Based on our perceptions, our state of mind that we've gotten ourselves into. And that wouldn't be so important if we had not identified our state of mind with ourself, that this is me, this state of mind is me. I was laying in the grass in Northern California one summer up at the Vedanta retreat in Olima. And I was laying on the ground and watching one of those little walking, jumping spiders, kind of make its way through the grass, and how kind of what a spooky way they move in, sort of real jolty and instantaneous changes and then still silent. And he was hunting, and this other insect, some form of ant, was not too far away. And with the speed with which that spider jumped on that insect and captured it and ate it was mesmerizing to me. But the thing that really followed up on that experience was to think that here I was laying in the grass, enjoying a beautiful summer day, and completely at leisure, enjoying the sun, enjoying the summer, enjoying the freedom to have some time to lay there in the grass. Simultaneously in that same space was an ant just merrily going along, minding its own business, foraging for the anthill, most likely. And then the spider, compared to the ant, about 8 times its size. So probably similar, the same ratio as an elephant to us, this spider was to this little ant. And I thought about our experiences, the three of us, inhabiting the same space at the same time on the same day in the same weather. Mine was of freedom and leisure. The spider was of excitement and hunting and pursuing. And the ant, the horror of being attacked by this eight-eyed monster, and devoured on the same sunny afternoon that I lay there in peace. And I began to realize how this world runs in parallel like that you can have a room full of people, or even just 5 people, and that room can be heaven to 1 or 2 of them, and that room can be hell to 1 or 2 of them, even though it's the same room for everyone. And so we're going to dig into Vivekananda and Ramakrishna and life this morning to find out how is it that all of us on the same planet at the same time can be experiencing such different realities that aren't really explicable merely by the outside world or the conditions around us, since conditions also seem to be irrelevant to inner states. Some people in horrible conditions can find a great deal of contentment, and vice versa. So he starts off promising us, saying to us, like Thakur, this world is a mansion of mirth. This earth is blissful. Sweet is the literal translation, he says. This earth is sweet to all beings, and all beings are sweet to this earth. They help each other. See, that's the ideal. We help the earth. We are here to nurture it. You see that even in the Christian scriptures, the idea of it being a garden, which we are here to tend. And we've gotten this wrong idea of being here to exploit. And because we have taken the role of exploiters, we feel exploitation, because that's the nature of karma. That which you express is that which reflects back to you, right? No good deed goes unpunished, as they say. So this world that you live in, by and large, is the condition of the mind that you're using to construct it, that you're using to experience it. Are you helpful? Do you see yourself as being a contributing part who's looking to serve and looking to give? Or are you paying attention to your physical self and seeing yourself as victim, as someone whose rights are being trampled on, as someone who never quite gets what they deserve? So it's a matter of perspective. Are you here to give, or are you here to take? Because the lessons of numerous scriptures is that if you are here to take, you will leave hungry. Because there is nothing here to be had, nothing here to be taken. We're going to touch on that quite a bit here in a moment. And all the sweetness is the Atman, the effulgent, immortal one who is inside this earth. Whose is this sweetness? How can there be any sweetness but he? That one sweetness is manifesting itself in various ways. Wherever there is any love, any sweetness in any human being, either in a saint or in a sinner, either in an angel or in a murderer, either in the body or in the mind or in the senses, it is the beloved. It is the divine. So this lays out the promise for all of us that the reason that this earth is sweet, the reason that we are sweet to this earth, is because it's built and exists within a divine principle. And that divine principle is supreme love, love unconditioned. And that we float freely in this bliss. And we can construct freely in this bliss, in this mind that is also the beloved and also given to us, within which he expresses himself, or she expresses herself. That expresses itself in the mind. So wherever there is any love, I often say to people, because we live in an age of doubt where God is a questionable notion, and actually many concepts of God deserve to be questioned, deserve to be denied even. But this nature of God is that divine love, that principle of love, that principle of intelligence, our very existence itself. And so if we get away from these anthropomorphic ideas of God, these limited ideas of God with desires and disappointments and angers, and come to this idea of the beloved as a universal love, then we can see that love everywhere. Do you believe in love is the better question, I've often said, than do you believe in God? Believing in love is something undeniable. It's everywhere. It's in every song. It's in every heart. And so look around. If there's not enough love in your life, if there's not enough God in your life, then go and manifest some. Go and do an unmotivated act of kindness for no reason. Be gentle with somebody. Hand out a compliment to a stranger on the street. Be extra generous the next time you have an opportunity to share. Do these little things. If there's not enough divinity in your life, manifest it, because you are the infinite source of that. It will not reveal itself to you until you open the door and let it reveal itself in you and of you. So that it's not conditional. It doesn't matter if the person is a sinner or if the person is a murderer or if the person is a saint or an angel. That same principle of love operates within that person, manifests within that person. And so God can be seen and appreciated in everyone and everything. And if it's not seen quickly and easily at first, then the invitation is to stand and contemplate, to be quiet for a moment until the inner eye can identify the love in that person and how it's manifesting in that person. That's the only question, is how is it manifesting? Is it manifesting in a way that's easy to see, meaning it's manifesting through virtues? Or is it manifesting in a more hidden way, a love of money, a love of pleasure, a love of self, which might be more difficult to see, but nonetheless as apparent? And so see God everywhere with these spiritual eyes. This world is composed of that love. This is why we thrill at seeing it, because it's our nature. It's why we love to see beautiful things. You cruise through YouTube and you see random acts of kindness, and they always bring a great deal of joy. Whether it's soldiers coming home from war and surprising their kids, or whether it's a new pet, for the family. We feel this thrill of joy inside because we are of the nature of this divinity that is everywhere. And the love that it manifests when we catch a sight of it, when we catch an understanding of it, there's a thrill within you because it is you. It's a resonance. That thrill in you is the same as the resonant sound in a guitar, because that guitar was made to capture the vibration of that string and to enhance it and to manifest it beautifully. And that is you. You are the guitar to the divine, and you are created to resonate that sound of love and intelligence, of service and compassion, of caring and giving. You are designed to take that and enhance it and to make it obviously beautiful and obviously enjoyable. Physical enjoyments, he continues, physical enjoyments are but he. Mental enjoyments are but he. How can there be anything but the divine? How can there be 20,000 gods and devils fighting with each other? Childish dreams. Whatever is the lowest physical enjoyment is he. And the highest spiritual enjoyment is he. There is no sweetness but he. Thus says Yajnavalkya. You see this wonderful truth that yes, the world is pure. Yes, the world is perfect, but you have to have eyes to see it and the ears to hear it. Otherwise, it becomes a trap for you. Because we want to hear these truths and give ourselves license because of these truths. Oh, if it's all God, I can take it all as God and I can enjoy it all as God. That is true. If you are taking it as God, if you are taking it as an object, as an individual object, then you will be hungry. Then you will starve slowly because there's nothing there. And you say, but you just told me it is all to be enjoyed. It is all to be enjoyed when you know that it is God. And when you know that it is God, you know that God. And God does not need God to fulfill God. You are already full. You are already free. And if you know this in a mature way, there is no need, there is no craving, there is no lacking in this world. because you know that you are free and apart from it, and that it is your reflection. It is you alone. When you come to that state and look upon all things with the same eye, with that eye of equanimity, knowing that it is all equally divine everywhere. He says, when you come to that state and look upon all things with the same eye, when you see even the drunkard's pleasure in drink, only that sweetness, then you have got the truth. And then alone you will know what happiness means, what peace means, what love means. And so long as Toll makes these vain distinctions, silly, childish, foolish superstitions, all sorts of misery will come. So having these eyes that sees that all of this is of the divine, and that all pleasure and all joy and all enjoyment is a manifestation of the divine. And I love the fact that he uses a drunkard's drunkenness as an example of a manifestation of bliss, because all bliss belongs to the divine. How is it then that somebody who is a rigid religious person cannot have judgment? It's by seeing his beloved, even in a drunkard, even in a prostitute, even in all of the people that are different from us, and in different ways, and struggling with different things, and being and manifesting in different ways. This is the secret to loving each other. This is the secret to loving God, is to see this love first and foremost in everyone, and to withhold judgments, because judgments belong to body and mind. They don't belong to a soul. They don't belong to a boundless, infinite love and compassion with no cause. Judgment doesn't belong there. Meanness doesn't belong there. Prejudice doesn't belong there. Exclusionary practices of any kind don't belong there. Our heart needs to become as big as the world that it is in order for us to be healthy, in order for us to know our true nature. Without that, if you do see everybody as individual and separate from you, and you don't recognize the beloved in them, and you still feel desires for things and objects in the world, then you produce hunger in yourself, because you just create in yourself an array of memories which, when stirred, create hunger again in the moment, a need again for a repeat of those experiences of pleasure, because in and of themselves they gave you nothing, and they left you with nothing but that wave of the mind. So that is why he says that without this understanding, without these eyes of seeing the beloved in all things, he says that's why we will be stuck in a silly and childish set of mind, a foolish superstition with all sorts of misery that will come. But that one immortal one, the effulgent one, the shining, bright, glorious one, the one that's not difficult to see, should you tune your eyes to see it. He is inside the earth. It is all his sweetness. This is the third paragraph going on about the manifestation of God, of that divine love in everything, everywhere, all the time. 3 full paragraphs, and there's 4 and 5 more after it. He goes on and on. He is inside the earth. It is all his sweetness, and the same sweetness is in the body. And these are wonderful truths, because we live in a day and age of shaming, a day and age when we point out weaknesses, and we dwell on weaknesses, and we cap on weaknesses. You can score a point with your wit by bringing out someone else's weakness. This is the world of pain. This is the world of suffering and loneliness. That's not a beautiful trait to have, no matter how witty you might be about it. We're looking for men and women of reconciliation, men and women of character who can go beyond their likes and dislikes and see beyond the 2-sentence insults of the internet, and to touch the heart of a person behind, and who can reach in and touch the feelings of a person behind a statement. Those are the people that we're looking for, and that we're desperately in need of in this world today. Be that person. He is inside the earth. It is his sweetness, the same sweetness in the body. The body is the earth, as it were. and inside all the powers of the body, all of the enjoyments of the body, is He. The eyes see, the skin touches. What are these enjoyments? That self-effulgent one who is in the body. He is the Atman, the soul. This world, so sweet to all beings, and every being so sweet to it, is but the self-effulgent. The immortal is the bliss in that world. In us also he is that bliss. He is that Brahman. God is within you, and all that you have ever enjoyed has been his hand, has been her embrace of you. All things that you've enjoyed, and even those things that you've suffered in pain, on the reverse side of them is a beauty, because they cause growth, they cause change, they cause introspection, and all of that produces eyes that can see, produces a heart that can feel, produces ears that can hear. Hear what? That song celestial, that divine word, that love of God. The air is so sweet to all beings, and all beings are so sweet to it. But he who is that self-effulgent, immortal being in the air is also in this body. He is expressing himself as the life of all beings. The life of all beings. The very fact that you are alive and aware of it, that is the only proof of the divine that is necessary. He is that awareness. He is that love. He is that intelligence that allows you to be, to experience, to express, and to manifest. He's the very matrix of being that you enjoy, so subtle and yet so gross, because there's nothing more obvious and yet nothing that we think about less than just our being, our existing, our awareness. This air that you breathe is composed of love. He goes on here, the sun is so sweet to all beings. All beings are so sweet to the sun. He who is the self-effulgent being in the sun, we reflect him as the smaller light. We are the moon to the divine. We are that expression of God and infinite. So we see here slowly, slowly, that realization, that authenticity is not about a miracle of seeing. It's not about an attainment of a perspective. That it is a simple relaxing into what is as it is, and to remove that perspective of a particular ego that is causing shadows and distortions and fuzziness around the edges that confuse us, that take what is a world of love and makes it a world of competition, a world of selfishness, because we've identified with a smallness, with a particular, with the hungers of the body and mind, and not with the fullness of our nature, not with that fullness of love, that fullness of an immortal self that cannot be wounded or touched. What can be there but his reflection? Right? If God alone is, anything that seems other is merely a reflection of that one self-same infinite. He is in the body, and it is his reflection which makes us see the light. This moon is so sweet to all, and everyone is so sweet to the moon, but that self-effulgent and immortal one who is the soul of that moon, he is in us expressing himself as mind. What a wonder the mind is. The mind is everything. It's one of my favorite, if you follow any of the vlogs, you know it's one of my favorite ruminations, is this idea that we live in a mind and not a world. And this mind is the canvas of the divine. It is painting the artwork of love, that every life happening in this world is a novel of the manifestation of pure love, the manifestation of pure intelligence, the manifestation of ideals. That every life lived follows that same ideal, that it is God shining, telling a story of love through many different circumstances, many different plot twists, many different arrangements of object and social structures and people and mind, all a play of the mind. And we dance and we laugh and we sing and we cry in all of that. And all of it is good. And all of it is perfect as it is to those who see that it is God alone dancing. What can there be but his reflection? It is his reflection which makes us see light. This moon so sweet to all, and so sweet to the moon. We are the soul of that moon. He is in us, expressing himself as mind. This lightning is so beautiful. Everyone is so sweet to the lightning. But the self-effulgent and immortal one is the soul of this lightning, and is also in us, because all is that Brahman. The Atman, the self, is the king of all beings. So this wonderful statement of the isness of things, that sweetness is the rule, that love is the reality, that this gentleness that exists between all things is the norm, and that were we to know our contentment within, were we to know our identity as spirit, were we to know these things, the world would settle down like an unused swimming pool overnight. The ripples would decrease, and the reflection of God would be singular and beautiful and recognizable. But with 1,000 egos running around, feeling the starvations of the body and mind, and trying to make up for their inherent limitations with other things that are equally limited, causes that surface of that water to be constantly stirred, constantly out of peace. And what is that body of water? It is your mind, where God is reflected. In all of the desires you stir up in your identity of body and mind, of being a body, of being a mind, with all of the dedication and power that you put into that notion that I am this, to that degree God is seemingly invisible, only because he has become everything that you're looking at. But you don't see one thing. You see billions of things, shards of a broken mirror reflecting a single image. What is it that blocks us? Expression is necessarily degeneration. So yes, the mind is God expressing himself, but the mind is necessarily a degeneration, Swamiji is saying, because spirit can only be expressed by the letter. And as St. Paul said, the letter kills. Life cannot be in the letter, which is only a reflection. Yet principle must be clothed in matter in order to be known. We lose sight of the real in the covering and come to consider that as the real instead of as the symbol. This is an almost universal mistake. So this idea that, yes, action betrays imbalance. To move, you have to be out of balance. Walking is controlled falling. You have to be out of balance so that foot goes forward to catch yourself again. And that forward momentum continues and you're out of balance for the next step. You see, all movement, all change is an imagined imbalance, is an imagined lack, a hunger that drives you to put that foot forward to catch yourself again. So by necessity, all that we see, though it is God, it is degenerated because it is removed from the moment and left as an imprint. It is not the thing itself. It's difficult to experience the moment because we don't see it until it's reflected in mind. You see, so that moment as it is, ever present, ever pure, ever perfect, is actually changeless. It's the impressions on the mind that it leaves that give the idea of change, that give the idea of narrative and story and personality and longevity. All of these things, it's left because of the imprint of the moment, which can't be captured, cannot be caught, because the moment is always infinite. The moment always has a billion facets of variables presenting itself to you. It cannot be captured And yet the mind catches an imprint of it. And when you see that imprint, that is your experiential now. That's why they say all of this is a reflection of the divine, because the mind takes a snapshot very quickly of a moment which can't be snapshotted, which can't be caught as a whole because it's infinite. The mind catches a partial snapshot of that and shows it to you. By the time you see it, you, the ego self, by the time you witness the moment, it's already passed. It's already gone. And that's why they call it Maya. That's why they say, you see, there's nothing there. That which you're looking at has already gone, has already changed, is no longer the same, will never be the same again. And if you liked it enough, you'll hold on to that image and you'll store it in your mind, and that will forever affect how you view the moment, because you'll make arrangements to allow for the additional information of that remembered past moment to project onto your current moment. So you see, it's a matter of bringing the mind to stillness. It's a matter of bringing the mind to a peaceful resting place where it sees only the moment as it is, and not just its reflection in the mind, not just its activity in the changing. He goes on to say here, expression is necessarily degeneration because spirit can only be expressed by the letter. So it's got to be captured. Any expression, any manifestation has to be a degeneration. When the artist has an ideal that he tries to express on the canvas, he does the very best that he can, but it is still not the thing that inspired the painting within him. It's the best representation that he can come up with a brush, a canvas, and some paints. But it is not the idea itself. It's only the reflection. And that's the nature of this world that we live in. Spirit can only be expressed by the letter in order to be manifested, and it does that in order to be known. So we study this world to know the nature of God, to know the nature of ourself, to know that isness that permeates all things, and to find that divinity within it, where there's infinite contentment, infinite safety, infinite wonder, and a myriad of things that are infinite in their nature, to spend eternity falling in love with love. Giving up all refuge, he takes refuge in God. You see, instead of looking at the symbol, like we mentioned, that by the time your mind has captured a still, that it then feeds to you, the watcher of the mind, the moment has already gone. So you want to go deeper than that. You want to have the isness of being that presupposes the viewed moment, the captured image of God. You want to experience life before it happens, as it were, before the mind recognizes change or creates change. You want to see there. So he's saying, take all refuge, take no other refuge, which means don't go out into the world of the senses and of the mind in order to find the things that give you safety. It's not your money and financial situation that's going to make you secure. It's not having tons of friends that's going to make you feel contented with love inside. The more you play with the outside world, the more anxiety there is, the more things there are to be maintained, the more changes that are going to happen that are going to cause a constant sense of instability. That's why a rich man never has enough money. That's why a man can never have enough wives. You have Solomon in the Old Testament with 300 wives and 900 concubines. It's like, is there ever enough of these things? Absolutely not, because you're looking to the symbol for your fulfillment and not the thing itself. So we have to withdraw from this idea of being a body and all of its limitations, and we have to withdraw from this idea of being a mind with all of its limitations, and we have to settle into something that can't be known through the senses or through the mind. That's something that is us before it degrades into an image of us, into a reflection of us. We have to touch that self, which is the isness of this moment, before the awareness of the senses presents it again to us as a reflection. You have to find that inside, and that takes a lot of work. It takes a long time, sometimes, to find. Scriptures are to be followed as long as one's life has not become firm. So the scriptures are there to help you to determine what are the things that are going to calm the mind. What are the things that are going to remove confusion, that are going to allow you to see this unity, to see the reality of love behind all things, even in the face of the horrors that it sometimes seems to produce. It's giving up all refuge, but that's that divine self within, before the senses, before the mind. It's following the scriptures to get hints at how we come to feel and know these separate ideas of self. Just knowing the difference between body, mind, and self takes years of practice and listening to the solitude within before you can sense that difference, before you can know, oh, the body is exerting itself. And it does that without any power until you attach an I to that demand. And then it's you who thinks that you want that. You know, the body becomes hungry. Well, the body just remains a variable until you say, I'm hungry. And then by identifying with the body, you've now empowered it and you've given it control over you. Now you have to go feed it in the proper way. But you recognize it as body. It's the same when you're working with mind. The mind is the same way. The mind will be like, the mind is lonely. Well, that's just a world of infinite places until you say, I'm lonely. And now you've empowered the mind to control you. And you have to go take care of its loneliness because you've mistaken it for your own. That's this seeing I, this knowing self that we're trying to reach, that knows who it is, knows that it is not mind, knows that it is not body, that all of those things are manifested within it, that it is the product of, that it produces all of those things. And by knowing that, we take refuge in that, and we find the truth of our being. We find the truth of the universe. So scriptures are to be followed as long as one's life has not become firm, or else there is danger of doing evil in the name of liberty. Now, what's he hinting at there? You know, this is that one thing I shared. One morning I was taking my shower, getting ready for the day, and I was going through this affirmation that I sometimes do in the morning of being absolutely free, that I'm not determined at all by my past or my future, or even by the conditions of body, mind in the present, that I'm absolutely free. And when I first started doing that affirmation, I realized that the first thought that comes up when you say I'm free, you want to immediately take that freedom and lock yourself into a desire. You immediately want to put the shackles back on again because your first idea of I'm free is, oh, what do I want to do? So you immediately subjugate yourself to the senses or the mind again when you realize that you're free, because that is what you've come to associate freedom with. It's a bondage to the mind and senses. Instead, say, I'm free, and let that freedom itself be your enjoyment. Let that freedom itself be your fulfillment. There is nothing necessary that's going to make it better in this moment. You are the very best in this moment. You are the very fullest. You are the very dream of your ideal. If you can separate the chaff from the wheat, if you can know your identity. So for a man, he must prove that he is not a machine. And to do this, he must demonstrate that he is not under the control of anything, under the control of nothing. That's what freedom it is. That's what it is to be human, to be free of the control of anything. And the only way to do that is to know yourself as the dreamer and not the dreamed. To know that this world and all of your experiences of it exist within you. You do not exist within it. To know that is the secret knowing of life. But how do we get there? In the scriptures, it says something very important in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, 23rd verse. It's talking about the nature of your soul, this isness that permeates all things. He says this soul, that weapons cannot cut it. Okay? It can't be cut, it can't be divided. It's a singularity. Nor can fire burn it. It cannot be affected by anything. Water cannot wet it, nor can the wind dry it. Now, I've spent a lot of times in the last week thinking about this because it's one of the most beautiful scriptures for betraying freedom to yourself that's possible. Because there's a wonderful hint here to your nature. You see, it's saying that you in your nature are beyond the effects and changes of this world, beyond the hungers and thirsts and fulfillments of this world. It's saying to you that nothing can be added to you and nothing can be taken away from you. And that's a very important hint for how to live. What you're living is not going to add to you, and it's not going to take away from you. That there is nothing to be hidden, to be won or lost in this world. You are that unchangeable, self-same love, existence, intelligence absolute. You cannot add to yourself. More money is not going to make any difference. More pleasure is not going to make any difference. More family is not going to make any difference. More cars aren't going to make a difference. Getting that latest piece of tech isn't going to make a difference. And do I have to say that? Do you have to be told that? No. But yet we're still running after all of these things, working 10, 12, 14 hours a day to pay for them. Why? If they can't add anything to us or take anything from us. What is your motivation in there that keeps you looking and seeking and scratching and tilling at the earth to try and find your joy and happiness? Know that it is not there. Step out of the mind and body and let the mind and body carry on. The mind knows what it needs. The body knows what it needs. They'll work together to fulfill those things because they're the rolling stone of samsara. You, the soul, the self, are the dreamer, watching it all happen, watching it all take care of itself, watching it all fulfill itself. The imbalances of the body will cause it to walk, whether or not you think you're doing it or not. So to think of yourself in this way, of something that cannot be added to or taken away from, because there's nothing necessary to be added or taken away. It's perfect as it is. And when you come to know that 0 point, then the ego stops acting and your divine nature begins manifesting. And that's a very beautiful change, because at that time, all that is done is sweet. All that is accomplished is right. And all that is unfolding in front of you is seen clearly and freely as the beloved, as a manifestation of the divine. When that ego is involved in there, that's limitation and hunger. There's always fear involved. There's always anxiety involved. There's always insecurity involved. And this is why, as spiritual seekers, we have to become masters of mind, so that we understand all the wild little ways that it gains control of us, that we become deluded into identifying with it. And we have to become masters of the body. We have to know when we're being beguiled into attaching our I to it, when we're being whispered to by its hungers and its thirsts, and know that they're optional. They're not forbidden necessarily. As long as you're in charge, as long as you can say no, you can say yes. But if you can't say no, don't be deluded into thinking that you're able to say yes. They're one and the same. That's how you know whether you're living as the soul or as a mind or as a body. If you're in the mind or body, you won't be able to say no to things. You'll be manipulated and controlled by the world around you. You'll be manipulated and controlled by the state of the body. You'll be miserable when it's hungry. You'll be elated when it's full. The mind, you'll be depressed when it's in that state. You'll be blissful when it's in another one. And it will change always, bouncing you from one to the next. But to be able to say no, to be able to stand aside and say, I'm unaffected by those things. I am sweetness itself, in the way that all these paragraphs started. I am the fulfillment itself of the universe. To know that is to know who you are, is to know your nature. And then it will manifest so freely and so beautifully in the life of a saint that, oddly enough, might bear your name. So we have to get practical about these things. He goes on to say, and what are we doing? The son of a poor Brahmin who has sanctified us by his birth, he's talking about Sri Ramakrishna here, raised us by his work, and has turned the sympathy of the conquering race toward us by his immortal sayings. What are we doing for him? Truth is not always palatable. Still, there are times when it must be told. Some of us do understand that his life and teachings are to our gain, but there the matter ends. It is beyond our power even to make an attempt to put those precepts into practice in our own lives, far less to consign our whole body and soul to the huge waves of harmony, of jnana and bhakti that Sri Ramakrishna has raised. This play of the Lord, those who have understood or are trying to understand, to them we say, what will mere understanding do? The proof of understanding is in work. Will others believe you if it ends only in verbal expressions of assurance or is put forward as a matter of personal faith? Work argues what one feels. Work out what you feel and let the world see. All ideas and feelings come out of the fullness of the heart are known by their fruits. Practical works. You have to be this change. You have to be this security. It's not enough to sit there and say, I am perfect, I am full, and then go running after all of your desires. It's not enough to say, I have no refuge but God alone, and then still be constantly planning your dinner parties and your new purchases and your upgrades. If there is no refuge for you but God alone, then God is the only thing that is necessary for your fulfillment. And you can sit down on any chair or on any floor or in any place and find bliss, find contentment. That is the fruit of spiritual life. That's the fruit of the Spirit. That joy and blessing follow you all the days of your life because God is present everywhere and in constant conversation with you. And it is a dance of divine love, supreme love, that bodies don't understand and minds cannot comprehend. And you are invited to that. You are invited to that. The proof of your life is in your work. We have to purify the mind so that we can break free of its control, break free of the body's control. Vivekananda says, meditate. These ideas are very helpful to men. They are for meditation. For instance, meditate on the earth. Think of the earth and at the same time know that we have that which is the earth, that both are the same. Identify the body with the earth and identify the soul with the soul behind. Identify the air with the soul that is in the air and that is in me. They are all one, manifested in different forms. To realize this unity is the end and aim of all meditation. There it is. Why do we meditate? To see oneness, to understand that we are not separate and apart from the whole, that the perfection of this experience can only be seen from the perspective of oneness, of unity. If we remain broken little pieces, separate and apart from everything else, that's where misery is, that's where imperfection is, that's where hunger is, that's where thirst is. All of our meditation is to know our place in this world order, and that is that we are that, one without a second. And so we are all the same. To realize this unity is the end and aim of all meditation. The first lesson then is to sit for some time. Let the mind run on. Let it do its thing. Focus on being the watcher. This is one of the first things. It's not what the mind that's doing. What it's doing is not the important thing. What it's thinking about is not the important thing initially. As we sit there first in our meditation, watch it. Let it run on. Just stay aware. See it. And in that practice, by not caring what's going on in the mind, by not analyzing what it's thinking about, by not identifying with what's going through it, but to identify with the watcher, with the one watching, we begin to develop that understanding, that sense of separateness, that the mind is separate from me. The mind is within me even, as it were. That all of these things are being presented to that divinity within me. So to come to know this, the first lesson is watch the mind. Become the watcher. Understand that's the I. That's who you are. You are not the contents of the mind. You are not the body. You are the witness of both, watching them, and that the body exists within the mind. It's the mind that has created the symbol of body, the idea of body for you. So simply wait and watch. Let the mind jump about like a monkey. Knowledge is power, says the proverb, and that is true. Until you know what the mind is doing, you cannot control it. Give it the rein. Many hideous thoughts may come into it. You will be astonished that it was possible for you to think such thoughts. But you will find that each day the mind's vagaries become less and less violent, that each day it is becoming calmer. In the first few months, you will see that the mind will have a great many thoughts. Later, you will find that they have somewhat decreased, and in a few more months, they will be fewer and fewer, until at last the mind will be under perfect control. But we must patiently practice every day, all day, every day, watching, being aware, being present, always. Watching and knowing and reminding ourselves of our nature and the nature of all that we see and experience around us. To watch the mind, let the mind still. The mind was not meant to be a playground of ideas. It was meant to be a mirror that reflected divinity back to you. It was meant to be a mirror that reflected divine love to you, that reminded you always of what you were and who you are. It wasn't meant to be so confusing. It wasn't meant to be so overwhelming and such an anxiety machine. Come back to knowing your nature. Come back to watching it manifest in this world. And sit and wonder. As soon as the steam is turned on, the engine must run. As soon as things are before us, we must perceive. So a man, to prove that he is not a machine, must demonstrate that he is under the control of nothing. This controlling of the mind and not allowing it to join itself to the centers is pratyahara. How is it practiced? It is a tremendous work, not to be done in a day. Only after patient, continuous struggle for years can we succeed. So this is not a game for for the weak of heart. This is an investment with an eternal payoff. Knowing your freedom sets you free forever. It comes to that realization that you are forever, that you are the awareness within which the universe is. So this watching the mind and not letting it join to the centers. What does that mean? That means not letting that finger of I get confused into thoughts, get confused into manifestations, into objects, into beings. Not letting that I refer to a body, not letting that I refer to a mind, but holding that I on the ever-present self, the lover, the thinker, the knower, the beer, to know, to have that sense of I, and to be sensitive enough in yourself so that you know when that I is attaching to the body, because it will cause suffering, and saying, no, I'm not the body. All of that is variable. No, I'm not the mind. That's variable. I'm unchanging presence, unchanging being. It is a tremendous work. Hafiz writes another poem. He says that beloved's name is a mystical weave and pattern, a hidden sieve of effulgence we need to pass through thousands of times. For by constant remembrance of the friend, everything that will be said will be safe to drink. Isn't that a beautiful idea? So this thinking of God, you can't say the word God, no matter what your concept of God might be at the moment. That too grows and changes. But just by saying God, it forces the mind to connect to an ideal, to this sense of God, to this sense of being. And so that name being repeated over and over and over again, bringing us constantly into that awareness of the moment, the I am, this isness, purifies us. It removes all of the impurities of confusion that are caused when we identify with body and mind. It's when we're in the body that vice, anything that's motivated by that sense of separation, anything that happens in that stage of separation, that's vice. Everything that happens in the ideal of oneness or unity is virtue. So you can list them out like all the religions do. They can become numerable virtues and innumerable vices. And yet the simple rule is that which leads you to this idea of oneness is virtue. And that which requires difference, requires separation, that is vice. So know that as a simple rule, and come to know this beloved nature, the nature of love that is within you, running the name of God through your mind over and over and over and over again. So that separation and difference, the changing begins to fall away, and that steadiness of self begins to be born within. We have to long for that. Sister Christine, she writes about Vivekananda. It is needless to repeat the formal teaching, the great central idea. These one can read for himself. But there was something else, an influence, an atmosphere charged with the desire to escape from bondage. Call it what you will, that can never be put into words, and yet was more powerful than any words. It was this which made us realize that we were blessed beyond words, to hear him say this indecent clinging to life. It drew aside the curtain for us in the region beyond life and death, and planted in our hearts the desire for that glorious freedom. We saw a soul struggling to escape the meshes of Maya, one to whom the body was an intolerable bondage, not only a limitation, but a degrading humiliation. Azad, Azad, the free, he cried, pacing up and down like a caged lion. Yes, like a lion in a cage who found the bars not of iron but of bamboo. Let us not be caught in this time, would be his refrain another day. So many times Maya has caught us. So many times we have exchanged our freedom for sugar dolls which have melted in the water when we touched them. Let us not be caught this time. So in us was planted the great desire for freedom. Two of the three requisites we had already, a human body and a teacher. And now he was giving us the third, the desire to be free. It is possible to be free from the delusions of body and mind, from the passages of time, from the changing world, from the continual circle of life and death. The sages have demonstrated it and have shown it and have given us the methods for experiencing it ourselves if we're not comfortable in merely believing or having faith in something. But know that in the end, this body was, what does he say, a degrading humiliation when you believed it to be yourself. You know, as you grow older, it becomes more and more a degrading humiliation. In great fun when you know that you are merely an inhabitant, that it is merely an idea within your immortal mind, you know, but that this body, as it begins its degrading descent into what? Decomposition, even before you're done with it, that it becomes that degrading humiliation. Be free from that. Know that you are more than that. And the same with the mind, with all of the shocking things that go through it, all of the things it suggests all the time. Laugh and move on. It is not you. Your soul cannot be cut, it cannot be burned, it cannot be wetted, it cannot be dried. Nothing can be added to you and nothing taken away. You are eternal and free and blissful, ever present and always perfect. You are that.